Episode 132, Marriage Isn't Hard. Okay, my friends, welcome back. Now, with that title, I feel like I'm kind of preparing for some Rotten Tomatoes this week. But the truth is, I'm going to take it because what I'm going to teach you today is absolutely critical. And I'm not willing to not say it. I'm not willing for you not to hear it. I think that not saying it would be a tremendous disservice. And so while some people might take what I'm saying, hopefully no one will take it the wrong way, but I can see that that's possible. I'm going to say it anyway. So lately, I've been seeing a lot of messaging around how hard marriage is, marriage workshops, marriage classes, marriage interviews, things like that, with all this kind of underlying statement of marriage is so hard. And so here's what you could do. Here's a solution that you could do to make it better. Marriage is so hard. Could we understand why? Let's understand why it's so hard. And in a recent interview, just literally, I heard the question straight out, why is marriage so hard? Now, I want to give a really, really important caveat. Some of the people that I've seen this messaging from, I respect their work tremendously. And I completely understand why they're using this messaging. When a person feels like she's drowning in her marriage, when she is not happy in her marriage, and it just seems when you feel that way that everyone else is doing perfectly fine and you are very much not doing fine. So you need to know that people get that marriage can be hard. You need to know that you're not the only one struggling. I know that. I get that. And I know also from a marketing perspective, you're supposed to speak to the pain point that a person has, right? So you're supposed to talk to the people who are really struggling in their marriage because those are the people who are going to come to your webinar or pay for your course, right? So that just is like logical marketing sense. So I get why it's happening. And I want you to know that what I'm going to say in this podcast comes from someone who struggled a lot in her marriage. And as someone who's worked very, very hard on it, the message that marriage is hard is poison. Marriage just is. It is a legal status. It is a halachic status. That's it. We don't get to add anything to it because that's not part of the definition of marriage. But what happens? Why do I care? So what? What happens if we believe that marriage is hard? What happens is really a problem because your brain likes to be right. So your brain is now going to go to work proving it to you that marriage is hard. It's going to notice why marriage is hard. It's going to notice other people's marriages and how much they're struggling. It's going to notice what's not going right in your marriage and where you're struggling. You will never see a goal beyond working hard at this hard thing called marriage. Because if marriage is hard, really, what can you hope for? You can hope for being willing to do enough hard work to get through this hard marriage because marriage just is hard. That's just what it is. You will never know what I want you so much to know if you believe the myth that marriage is hard. You will never know that marriage can be, for years on end, a drama-free, lovely, connecting, absolute pleasure. Marriage is a pleasure. I love being married. It's not part of my life that requires hard work, that requires sacrifice, that requires compromise. I don't associate marriage with any of those things. That is not my experience of marriage. So if we're going to define it anyway, obviously, if I say marriage is a pleasure, I'm also making it up. But why not make up that one, right? Hashem gave us this world so we could experience pleasure. Hashem gave us the mitzvos for us to experience pleasure. Being married is a mitzvah. We are meant to experience pleasure from it. So if we're going to define marriage in any way, why not just say marriage is a pleasure? Then what's going to happen with our brain? Then when you're struggling, you're going to say, well, I know marriage is a pleasure, and right now that's not what I'm experiencing. Let's figure out what's going on so we can get back on track. Because marriage is supposed to be enjoyable. And just chick-chock, let's fix it up. I want you to think about this like math. Now, before I say this, I'm going to say there's a lot of things that I get wrong as a mom. Spend 20 minutes in my house and you'll find them, okay? But when it comes to math, I really feel like I got it right. I used to teach elementary school and I only taught girls, and I have 3 girls. And it was really important to me that I, with my own children and also in my classroom, that I offset all the negative messaging that girls often get about math. They get it from their moms and their sisters and culture and wherever else, social things out in the world. There's so many negative messages about math specifically for girls. And by the way, this is all for the same reason that I said why I want to offset negative messaging about marriage. Okay. So obviously this is hopefully going to tie together. You're going to see the analogy. Why in the world should we tell girls that math is hard? I don't know if it's going to be hard for her. It might not be. Why would I start off with that? Right? And I see people do it all the time. Like, oh, you're in math. Isn't that hard? Oh, math, that was so hard for me. I just hated it. Probably because someone said that to you before you even got it started with math in your own educational career. So I've always been very intentional with how I speak about math, again, in my classroom, but mostly with my girls. I talk about how creative math is because there's lots of different ways to get to the same answer. I talk about how enjoyable math is. Look, all these games that we play, the basis is math. I talk about how naturally good my girls are at math. I found evidence wherever I could at how they were just naturals. And then I showed them the evidence. Now I have 3 girls. My youngest is 4. Who knows what's going to happen with her? But my 2 older girls both tell me that math is their favorite subject. One of them's debating between being a math teacher and an accountant. The other one wants to go into business. They aren't both natural math geniuses. I didn't excel in math at school for sure. And my husband, as far as I know, I don't think he was like beyond successful either. But their brains accepted what I said as reality, that math is fun, it's easy, it's creative, and you're good at it. And they found evidence that it's true. Then that evidence helped them be more confident and ultimately more successful in math. So what if we can do the same thing for our marriage, but for ourselves? Create a reality where the definition of marriage is that it's a pleasure. Marriage is fun. It's refreshing to spend time with your husband. It's a stress reliever to spend time together. Not what you're doing when you're together, just being together. By the way, make sure these thoughts apply to all aspects of your marriage. And then when we experience a blip on the radar, or maybe it's more than a blip, it's a massive blackout, we still know what our point of destination is. We know where we're headed in the GPS, the joyful, pleasurable marriage that we have in store for us, that we believe in. Now, does this require anything of us? Yes, this requires something of you. It requires your belief that it's possible. It requires a lot of mental responsibility. I'm not saying mental work, but mental responsibility. That means we have to learn to be happy without changing what's outside of our control. We have to learn to take pleasure in our husband as he is. We have to learn that it's so much better and more enjoyable and more fulfilling to love an imperfect human than to love this image that you constructed in your mind of what a husband should be. It wouldn't even be fun in the first place. It requires not holding your own happiness hostage for him to comply with all of your wishes and demands. And the hardest part, I think, is it requires learning how to just be happy. We have to choose in. This work is doable. It's not hard. It requires being intentional. It requires being willing. But at the end of the day, it's nothing more than a series of choices. If you aren't yet in my coaching program, I hope you can join me and do the work together with me. In January, we're going to be opening the doors at the end of December for January registration. And I want to just get a whole group of women together to show the world that marriage was never hard. Okay, my friends, see you back here next week. Bye-bye.